Good morning, good afternoon. How you doing out there today? This is David Robert for the Marketplace of Ideas podcast. I hope you're having a great day. It is June the 1st. For those who celebrate, this is Pride Month, so happy Pride to all those folks out there who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. Hopefully that people are out there spreading love and not hate, and that kind of thing. So thanks for listening. Before we get started, just want to let you know that you can find us, the Marketplace of Ideas podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. By the end of this month, however, you won't be able to find it on Google Play because Google Play will be done with podcasts. So you're out of luck there. And Spotify is changing things as well. Stitcher died last year as a podcasting platform. So you can still find us on iTunes as well as Spotify. You can also find us, wherever, Podbean, Riverside, I believe. There's a lot of different outlets out there, but I'll list them in the description there. And you can also find our stuff on YouTube as well. So we're up there under the Marketplace of Ideas podcast. We're just uploading a lot of the episodes. We got about 140 or so. And so you could find us there. And then we also have the Adult Fitness podcast, which we took a little hiatus from, but we'll be starting up this month again, as well as reintroductory to our Of Gods and Monsters, Strange Tales. So look for all of that. We are coming back with a fury and a vengeance. And when I say me, I mean myself and my co-host Phoenix here, who is just chilling on the rocking chair, living her best life. So today we're going to be chatting about how the internet does not forget. The title of this one is called "The Bodies Are in the Trunk. The Internet Doesn't Forget." And before we start off, I just wanted to state that I, being a man who's 45 and who grew up without the internet, can definitely tell you the joys of realizing I lived a life without having to worry about people delving into what I used to be into. And so a little background for this is about 2 years ago, my mother passed. I went to the house to look through some stuff, as one does, and I got a few of my mother's things out of the house. And I'm one of my few friends that I know of. I have actually 3 friends who could actually revisit their childhood homes. And so, growing up, it's a little bit of a thing where if you've moved a bunch of times, you may not have access to the home that you had as your formative years, from the time maybe you were brought home from the hospital till the time you moved. And I've been lucky to have that. My dad has lived in the home that I essentially grew up in, my second part of my childhood. The first one was in Clairview, so we haven't been able to get back to that one. But the other one, he's been living there for almost 34 years now, so quite a long period of time. So there's a lot of memories there. And so when I went there to kind of dig through the stuff, and I found some things, I also found my old report card from grade 5. I found a Nintendo, original Nintendo system that I borrowed from my brother there. I actually got to return that back to him, but found a whole bunch of stuff from our childhood, from when we were in elementary. And one of the things that I was looking at while I was, just reading through stuff was a old notebook that I had when I was in grade 3 or 4. And this notebook had various different things on it and writings and everything else. But some of the stuff that was in it was writings of myself telling people to stay away from my notebook, that you'd be in trouble if you read it. And I had all these weird stories in there. And it was from about 1990 or so, 1991 or 92. And I felt just this wave of nostalgia, but also this feeling of almost like a cringe sort of nature, like, thank God nobody has been able to see this or look into it or delve into it, And it got me thinking. It got me really thinking of how we, as a society, particularly in the West, since 2007, with the advent of the iPhone, where we could carry a computer in our pocket, and then with the with also the proliferation, I can never say this word properly, but the just the gaining ground of social media in our lives. So where now it's ubiquitous with everything that we do. We post our engagements, our divorces, our marriages, our new homes that we buy, when we're moving, when we're going on vacation, our family holidays and get-togethers and celebrations are all documented, cataloged, and put on for sale to the advertisers and highest budget sellers out there, people who will buy our online information to the highest bidder. And in a book that was written by Shoshana Zuboff, she is a professor, and I forget what university she's at, but she wrote a book called Digital Capital, or I believe it was Digital Surveillance, one of the two. And in it, she talks about how digital capital, I believe that's what it was, or surveillance capitalism, one of the two. But she talks about how we have been basically, bought and sold by larger corporations like Nabisco and Kmart and Target and Walmart and Amazon, and our information is being packaged and sold, and it's the new gold, basically. If you look at the NASDAQ and the TSX, a large majority of the companies that are running our stock exchange and trading is through information. And so it's an interesting thing to look into. But when we bring it back to our own personal thoughts and feelings and ideas and theories on life and religion and love, most of us who are my age and a little bit older didn't grow up with social media. I didn't come to use it until I was 26 or 27. So a fully formed frontal lobe. And yeah, I was almost 30, actually, if you think about it, before I even started using social media. I was, I think, 31 or 32 before I got my first iPhone, because prior to that I was just using those flip phones and the pay-as-you-go sort of things. And I had a landline. I still have a landline. It's crazy, but the reality was that there was a lot of people who started putting their life events online. And so a couple of things I want to talk about in how the internet doesn't forget, how it can be detrimental, and how we can sort of move forward with handling the fact that we've left almost everlasting parts of us for as long as the internet will be around. We've left parts of ourselves on there. And so a good example of that is back in 2007, when I first started using social media, I would post things on there probably daily. And it was just this rush of adrenaline that you would feel from being able to connect with literally hundreds of people within a day. And it was relatively new because most of the people that you knew in your social circle was primarily the people that you either went to school with or that you worked with, family or friends, but it wasn't anything super extended further beyond the confines of maybe a second cousin. Usually your social circle consisted of about less than 100 people. And so once you got onto social media, you could now look up your favorite actors and actresses and musicians and athletes, your friends from high school, your old school, old college roommates, or you could sort of creep on the pages of your exes and maybe your significant others and everything else. And so you would get to this place where now you could be in touch with hundreds, if not thousands of people. And it was a little bit unnerving. And for a lot of people, it was quite jarring. I had a few friends who didn't want to be on it at all, actually. And I was one of the late adopters because I didn't see a point in needing to look into other people's lives and to care about what they were doing. And why the hell would I even be bothered with worrying about what another person is up to. And when I look at it now, almost 20 years of using these platforms, which is insane to me, I find I'm a lot less intrigued with Facebook. Instagram I still will use from time to time. Twitter is almost non-existent. YouTube is where I get most of my music from. I'll just, digitally anyways. And I'll check out lectures, and I follow a number of channels on YouTube of various interests that I have, from fitness to chess to comic books to physical media to whatever else. But it's opened up a world of different ideas when it comes to the internet. But from your day-to-day life, very few of these people you'll actually meet in real life. I mean, there are Discord servers, and there are Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee sort of websites where you can support creators if you really value their work. And actually, it's funny because I have a few friends who treat the internet, particularly YouTube and other various video sharing sites. I believe there's Vimeo, and there's a few others. There's Tubi and some of the other streaming services. That is their TV. Most people don't watch television as they used to. I mean, we still have cable, but I only have it for PBS. But outside of that, a large majority of friends I know and family don't have cable. They don't use it. They don't have a use for it, and it's not part of their lives. So we're not gaining the same level of experiences together. And so I'll come back to that in a second, but I just wanted to finish the thought that I had about how difficult it is now to even imagine what life was like before social media. Like, how did you get together with your friends and family? How did you talk to one another? How did you connect? I definitely know for a fact that social media has destroyed some of the closer relationships I've had over the last 20 plus years, because prior to social media, Thursday, Friday nights, we would connect and see, hey, who's going where? What's everyone up to? What's everyone doing? Oh, as people are meeting at Boston Pizza, they're going to the movies, and then after they're going to meet at the game. Okay, well, we'll meet you guys after, blah, blah, blah. Because you had to do that. There was no other way to connect with your family or your friends other than actually getting on the phone, and you could text them, but, calling them and seeing, hey, what's everyone up to? And then your social circles of either school or church or that third place or work or the family connections you had would sort of cause you to reach out to people. Now, I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who's 45, and 20 plus odd years ago, I wasn't married, I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have children, you didn't have responsibilities. And that's the case for a lot of people my age and a little bit older, where you just don't have the option unless your kids are grown or you have a sitter, or if you're, not working a career, where you just don't have the time, money, resources, or even energy to get out on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. But there was a time where I would do that, and social media has rendered it almost a non-starter. Why would you want to connect and talk to people when you could just send them messages on, Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and Twitter and connect with them that way? And so there is something that's been lost. Now, I do have a close group of friends that I feel I can call, and I do have long conversations with a fair amount of them on the telephone, where we could talk for an hour and a bit. But if I'm going to be honest, a good portion of the reason why I started these 3 podcasts that I have, plus the YouTube channel, is primarily because for the most part, you don't have a lot of people willing or able or even, available to talk and to communicate like they used to. My mother-in-law pointed this out 2 years ago when I stopped in to give her some apples. And, I was sitting chatting with her, and she was stating how people just don't stop by to have a cup of tea anymore, just to drop in and say, hey, how you doing? Let me get you some cookies or some cake or something, and just, talk until 2, 3 in the morning or whatever. Just people aren't doing that anymore. And so because of that, you get this loss of I want to say this loss of connection, this loss of connective tissue where rather than say something to somebody out of disrespect or out of whatever, it's like you used to be able to talk to somebody to their face. And if I was, insulting somebody or had something against someone, I would need to be within earshot for them to hear it. Now I can hurl insults from a world away and have no repercussions. I could destroy someone's reputation online with accusations of wrongdoing and not be held accountable. There was a gentleman by the name of Joe Capis. I can never say his last name, but he was part of this group of this comic book writing duo called Comic Book Kayfabe, and I believe it was Joe Piscopo. I don't know if it's Joe Piscopo, but he ended his life because of accusations of grooming, of him having a inappropriate, I guess you could say, conversations with a minor at the time. I believe this girl was 17. She was an aspiring artist, and he sent her texts and DMs, and they were just chatting, and they never met in real life, and they never had like a sexual encounter. And this woman is now in her 20s, but she released these messages onto the internet, and it was not well received by a large portion of the comic book writing community. And this gentleman, due to the stress and the accusations of impropriety, he ended his life. And the people that accused him of this wrongdoing, which again, there never was any proof, and he never met up with this girl or tried to bring her into his house, they were never charged with anything. And so the idea that online there's this anonymity where you can, be, what do they call them? The keyboard warriors. You're clicking in your basement and saying horrible things to somebody that you'll never have to see in real life. And it creates this boldness. And so we see how much the things we put out there can hurt people. And I, for one, am very glad that the stuff that I had growing up with, I didn't have a journal online in the way of Facebook and Instagram, where anything I said or did during that time period could now be held against me. And because you could lose a job, you could lose friends and family with misinterpreted quotes or misinterpreted speech or things that you say that people might think is slanderous or racist or homophobic or Islamophobic or bigoted. It happened with James Gunn. It happened with Kevin Hart. There's just been a lot of instances where people's perception of what's, reality or whatever else, what they're saying just gets misconstrued. And then before you know it, hey, you're out on your ass. You're out of a job. And so I'm really happy that that I didn't grow up with that, right? But I think that leads me to my next point, which is, because the internet doesn't forget, how are we to now approach the fact that, social media is approaching its 20th year in activation in society? We've had such experiments as Pokemon Go, and TikTok might have a looming end in the next little couple of months, depending on how the U.S. votes with getting rid of TikTok outside of not having it used in America. So where do we go? What do we do when we have devices in our pockets that can connect us 24/7, 365 to any form of news, footage, music, art, information that we want? It's startling what we have access to. And so I think one of the things that I've tried to do myself, and this is just a few pointers that might help someone out there if they're listening, is to be as mindful as you can about what you put out there, and to be able to stand by it. Now, that can be tricky because we change and we grow as people. So if I'm saying something, and when I was 20 or 19, if I said something that would have been okay during that time period, like, saying like, oh, that's so gay, in reference to something that I didn't find that was cool. Well, I wouldn't say that now because I know better. And as a dumb kid, there's certain things you realize that are just not okay. Using the R word for somebody who's mentally challenged, we just know, okay, that's not even necessary. Why would you even say that? But we use that term to describe people that we thought were acting in a way that we didn't approve of, or the shirt, like the wife beater shirt, or the term Redskins or Eskimo, or any form of terms that we used for sporting teams, for God's sakes, for decades, right? And you just cringe when you listen to it now, but it was totally acceptable in the 80s and the 70s and whatever else. But I try to think to myself, okay, if I'm going to put something out there and it's kind of a joke or it's funny, if somebody points that out to me and says, hey, did you send this? To be able to say, yeah, I sent it because I thought it was funny. And so not to be a shrinking violet and like, I don't want to stand by that, but just realize sometimes the things that you put out there could come back and bite you in the ass, and to be able to stand by that. And then also not to take it so seriously. It is just the internet, and there's a lot of great things on there. So I'll share a lot of jokes, a lot of comedians, a lot of comedy routines, a lot of, political science stuff and religious stuff and everything else. But I don't take it super, super seriously. And the reason I don't is because, for one, it is the internet. And anybody with a connection, any idiot with a bullhorn can get up there, spout out their belief systems, and then step and go about their business. And the reason I've taken that approach of like not taking it too serious when it comes to various topics is because you might have somebody say something in a comment. I have a few videos out there that I've put on YouTube that are, just fun things that I'm doing throughout the day. And, I haven't had too much smoke in the comments. I haven't had too much beef, as it were. And somebody might say something slick or something, kind of targeted. And you have to realize, first and foremost, that if somebody says something like that you have put out your opinion to the world, right? And so it's not like my secret journal I had as a kid that was, in my room and only I read, but I put it out there. And so you have to expect that people will respond if you are looking for engagement. And sometimes people can be like, oh, it's really neat, or you suck, or your mom's ugly, or whatever. And you have to sit back and say, okay, if I'm willing to put out my ideas, my thoughts, and my beliefs out there into the world, I have to be ready for the reprisal, right? I have to be ready for kickback, or whatever, and realize that not everyone's going to think the way you think and believe what you believe. And so that leads me to my third point, in a way, is that where we are right now, and when I say we, I mean the royal we, the political, social, economic we of the popular culture, or whatever term you want to use for the zeitgeist. We're in a spot right now where, depending on what tribe you're in, depending on what sort of, side of the aisle you park yourself, you could share ideas and thoughts that could have people shouting, yes, you go, or, screw you, I hope you rot and burn in hell. There's so much acrimonious disdain for other people's beliefs that you may not like. And Bill Maher recently was on PBS. He was being interviewed by one of their correspondents, and he was stating that in America in particular, and this could probably be spoken to for a good majority of the rest of the world, you need to be able to sit and talk and have conversations with and disagreements with and spirited debates with individuals who you may not agree with, that didn't grow up the way you grew up, that didn't have the same upbringing, and that's totally okay. Somebody could have a different religious experience. There could be people who have grown up in communism or poverty or wealth beyond your wildest dreams, and you have to connect with those people. You have to sit and talk with those people. You have to say, hey, I'm an individual, and I'm going to see you as a person. And yeah, you might think that abortion should be legal, and another person might think that it should never be allowed, or you might feel that gay rights is an affront to the order in which God has, put the universe. You might not believe in a God. Another person might. Another person might believe in all the gods. Another person might believe in none of them. You might have people who are black and who have an experience of extreme racism in the deep south of America versus somebody who was raised, in quite affluent surroundings and don't see a problem with honoring the Confederate flag and believing that the South will rise again, particularly when it comes to the Civil War that America fought and the creating of their nation. You're going to have people that think and believe in different things. And I could tell you, straight off the bat, I have family members, in-laws, outlaws, close family, extended family. Some I completely agree with on so many counts when it comes to politics and religion and faith. And there are some that I could not be more diametrically opposed to what they have to say. But I could still sit there and have a meal with them or share pleasantries with them or talk about the weather or children or whatever. And even if they want to get into the stickier, more hot button issues and topics, I could definitely dance with that. I'm not as one correspondent who was let go on MSNBC. I can never say her name properly. She said that she is not so fragile of spirit that she cannot, hang out with people that she disagrees with. And I totally agree with that. I've had family members that believe things that, if I was not family members with them, I probably wouldn't have anything to do with them. That being said, you can still sit with a person, have some tea, drink some coffee, share a slice of watermelon, whatever you please, and go about your merry little way. And if we don't start to develop not necessarily a thicker skin, but just a level of common decency, just literal, just the ability to see somebody and say, you're a human being, and I'm going to treat you as one. And you might vote Republican, or you might be conservative, or you might be evangelical, right-wing, MAGA-loving, corn-fed off the Fox News network individual, or you might be somebody who's hippy-dippy, granola, using essential oils with earth crystals, who doesn't believe in voting or shoes or deodorant or anywhere in between that spectrum, or from the far left to the far right and back. But if I can't see you as a human being, as a person, as an individual, as an entity created by God in the image of the Lord, or somebody who is made of stardust, like David Bowie said, but just another individual. And we're not talking about people who want to actually commit harm and crimes and stuff, but just somebody who's a person. We're not going to make it. I've sent a couple of Instagram messages to a few of my friends that are, we'll just share stuff about how insane society is. And one of the quotes I like to use is, maybe it's time to give the dinosaurs another shot. Because, oh my gosh, we're just not doing it. Recently, I just saw this today. There was a lady by the name of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a politician out in the States. I don't know too much about her, but I believe she's a CrossFitter, and so she posted a picture of herself in a bikini, and she looks fit. She's taking care of herself, and she I guess eats really well and works out, and people were dogging her for that. Ripping into her about, oh, look at her, this is for her OnlyFans. Like, she's wearing a two-piece bikini with a hat on, and she's just standing there smiling. It's like, when you stop to recognize a person's humanity, I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, mixed, mulatto, whatever, whatever you are. If I can't see you as a person, the level of evil that could be bludgeoned onto you is unfathomable. If we look at the history books of what took place leading up to the Holocaust, I'm finishing a book called Annalise. I can never say it right, but basically it's a book about what would have happened if Anne Frank, if you're familiar with the book, The Diary of Anne Frank, what would have happened had she survived? Had her and her family not been brought to the gas chambers and survived? What would have happened? And it's a really interesting book. And I'm on to the part now where she's just recovered, like she's out of the hospital with her dad, and but her sister and her mother didn't make it. And it's a very sobering book. Like, I have a whole bunch of children's books I read right after just to kind of even keel things out. And one of the things that really kind of gets you when you're reading it is how dehumanizing the language was that the Nazis used for Jewish people, or anybody that didn't fit into the Third Reich's idea of what it meant to be part of the Aryan race, the master race. The 1,000-year Reich that was supposed to last for all this time. And what happened when people didn't fall in line? They didn't bend the knee. They didn't give into the mob, as they like to say online. But what happened when people were spoken about as a disease, as rats, as something to be done away with? Like, what happened with that? And the idea that people weren't people. The unspeakable horrors that took place to what happened to the folks during the Holocaust, to the tortures that took place on hundreds, if not thousands, of slave boats throughout the transatlantic slave trade, to what happened to our First Nations people here in Canada, to what happened to the Scots under the rule of the British, the fighting that, the IRA did against Catholics and Protestants in Ireland in the 90s. Good gosh. Like, you want to stop and be like, we're all on this blue dot together. And for the love of God, like, we can't get our shit together. Like, right now, as I record this, Russia is trying to wipe out Ukraine. There's no other way to put it. They're trying to erase a people. Putin has stated, Putin, Prime Minister, or President, the Tsar of Russia, that he feels that Ukraine was wrongly taken and that the borders have changed so many times that Ukraine needs to come back home. Subsequently, this is what China is also saying about Taiwan, but that's a whole other podcast altogether. Fact of the matter is that as I record this, as I said before, Putin has dangled the idea of nuclear war. What the actual... Like, you thought we were done with this. I remember watching Superman when he was destroying all the nukes. I think it was Superman 3. Like, we came to the realization that if we go to war now, there's nothing left. Nobody wins. We all end up just living off of nuclear waste and slowly dying of incurable diseases. It just doesn't work. At the moment, we have India, China, Russia, Canada, America, I believe Australia, England, all have nuclear weapons. We could blow up this planet 10 times over. And the fallout would just be us literally the Walking Dead with the zombies, and we couldn't drink the water, couldn't breathe the air, and couldn't eat the food. So if the radiation didn't kill us, the long-term effects would slowly wipe us out. That's what basically another World War III would look like. There's no benefit to any of us at all to go through that. Why would we? You know? Why? What's the point? Sounds insane. But here we are. Like, here we are. And you realize deep down that we need each other. And so, kind of just to finish, I guess, to end as it were, is that we need to treat the internet, social media, as something that can bring us together. And yeah, we all have our differences, and there's stuff that we probably don't think is maybe something we should have been sharing and talking about. But you know what? We're all humans out here. And outside of those who would do harm to others, who have, been convicted of crimes where they've harmed people deliberately and such, we got to find a way to work together and to be a lot more forgiving. And look, when people post things online and they may not have been in their right mind, they may have said something out of anger, out of frustration. It might have been an off-color joke that wasn't meant for my eyes to see. To give some grace. Like, I hate a lot of the stuff that's out there as much as the next guy when it comes to racism and bigotry and homophobia and Islamophobia and all that, but I can look at a person online and just say, oh, okay, this person hanging out with their kids. There was a picture I saw a long time ago, and I'll end with this. It was a gentleman, he's a bodybuilder that I followed and I respected back in the day. He's got some views, very ultra-conservative, I don't really rock with, but he had a portrait with he and his family, and he said something about being a godly man or, being a real man or whatever the case was. And I was like, all right, it's a beautiful family. He's done well for himself, and he is one of the more popular bodybuilders of our time. Back in my day, anyways, in the 90s, in the 80s. And I saw the picture and I thought, okay, this is nice. It's a nice picture. It's a nice family photo of him and his wife and his couple of kids, and I think he has some grandkids now. And now I could have taken offense and said, how dare he say that about, there are non-binary people out there and blah, blah, blah. And what about the people who can't have kids? And what about folks who been divorced and all this? But I looked at it, I said, oh, here's somebody celebrating his achievements and he's proud of his family. Why can't people have that? That's the thing. Like, somebody can say they really enjoy surfing, but then you might have somebody online saying, well, those surfboards were created by kids in sweatshops or whatever. Or you'll put up something about going on vacation. And this actually was happening during the pandemic, where people were doing what was known as stealth vacationing. I have a number of friends who have kids or don't have kids, and they travel and go to exotic locales, and I'll see their pictures online, and I'll be like, oh, that's real nice. But I'm not gonna make snarky comments and rip into them and say all sorts of passive-aggressive stuff, because them going on vacation is them celebrating, and maybe they paid off their debt, right? And they want to celebrate. Maybe they've had a rough couple of months or years, and they just want to get away, and they just want to share that. And there are people out there who are just hurting, just in a lot of pain, and they see somebody happy, and they're like, F you, whatever. So I know it's a bit long-winded, it's a bit of a rant here, but I guess what I wanted to touch on was we got to be careful what we're putting out there. Remember that people can and will call you out for stuff that they may or may not agree with. But at the end of the day, we got to see each other as people, right? And kind of, if we can, try to find that kid again, When I was down in the basement looking at that diary of mine, it brought me back. It really did. And it made me feel as though I was that kid again. I didn't have any worries. There wasn't the concern of, man, I gotta fix the car. I gotta change the brakes. I gotta paint this door. I gotta do all this stuff. It was like you just had this feeling of anything was possible, and you didn't have to worry or share, your stuff with everyone else. You could just be you. And I think we need that. I think if we're going to reclaim any sort of civility online, I think Twitter's lost, though. I think Twitter's lost to the dark edges, recesses of the universe. But if we can find some way, I don't know how, but find some way to reconnect, recalibrate, I don't know, but something. And get back to that, that kid that was writing in their diary and was sure no one would see it and was just spilling it all out. I think if we're able to do that, we can, I think there might be some hope for us. But anyways, just want to thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time out of your day, wherever you are. Look for us on all the platforms in the coming months. Check for us on YouTube. But until next time, take care. Be good to one another out there. Keep your stick on the ice. Peace.